Admiral Kethvar stood before the massive holographic display in the war room of the Zephyrian Empire's military headquarters. The blue dot floating in the center represented a small planet on the edge of known space. Earth, they called it. Such a simple name for what was about to become the Empire's most embarrassing military operation. The Admiral's forearms crossed behind his back as he studied the reports. 3 scouting missions had been sent to this backward world. 3 missions had never returned. Not a single transmission, not even debris. They had simply vanished without a trace. Impossible, muttered General Vexta, her scaled head shaking in disbelief. These creatures barely have space travel. Our scouts show they use chemical rockets to reach their own moon. Chemical rockets. Like something from our ancient history, Kethvar nodded. The intelligence reports painted a picture of a primitive civilization. The humans had only recently figured out how to split atoms for energy. They fought wars with metal projectiles and explosive chemicals. Their fastest ships crawled between planets using the same technology that lifted them off their world's surface. Perhaps our scouts encountered some natural phenomenon, suggested Commander Zilmoth from across the room. A black hole, maybe, or a solar flare. 3 times? In the same system? Kethvar's voice carried the weight of his centuries of military experience. No, something destroyed our scouts. These humans are hiding something. The war room fell silent except for the soft humming of the ship's engines. Outside the massive windows, stars stretched into lines as the flagship moved through hyperspace toward the rallying point. Soon the largest invasion fleet in Zephyrian history would be assembled. Supreme Commander Thexel entered the room, his massive frame causing the floor to vibrate with each step. Every officer immediately stood at attention. Thexel had conquered more worlds than any living Zephyrian. His reputation alone had caused entire systems to surrender without firing a shot. At ease, Thexel commanded, his voice like grinding stone. Admiral Kethvar, report. Sir, we have assembled 12,000 warships at the designated coordinates. 2 million of our finest warriors are ready for deployment. The fleet includes 100 dreadnoughts, 3,000 heavy cruisers, and our newest planetary bombardment vessels. Thexel examined the holographic display. And this is the target that concerns you?
Sir, this world has somehow eliminated 3 of our scouting expeditions.
We believe they may possess technology or weapons beyond our current understanding. A low rumbling sound filled the room. It took the officers a moment to realize their supreme commander was laughing. Admiral, you disappoint me. Are you truly afraid of a species that still burns fossil fuels for energy? Look at these readings. Thexel gestured at the display and new data appeared. Their most powerful weapons are fusion bombs. Fusion! They split heavy atoms like children playing with toys. We were using antimatter weapons when their species was still living in caves. The other officers began to relax. Perhaps the Admiral was being overly cautious. Their orbital defenses consist of a few space stations and some primitive satellites. Thexel continued. Their military vessels are tiny metal tubes that move slower than our cargo ships. Even their largest warships carry crews of less than 1,000. But sir, Kethvar persisted, our missing scouts were probably destroyed by some natural disaster or equipment failure. Space is dangerous, Admiral. Even our advanced ships sometimes fail. Thexel's eyes narrowed. Unless you believe these humans possess magic? More laughter rippled through the room. The idea seemed ridiculous when stated so plainly. No, sir, Kethvar replied. But I recommend we proceed with caution. Caution? Thexel's voice rose. Admiral, we are about to deploy the most powerful military force ever assembled by the Zephyrian Empire. We have enough firepower to crack their planet in half. Our smallest frigate could level one of their cities. You want caution against such primitives? The Supreme Commander moved to the display controls. The image of Earth zoomed in, showing the blue and green world in detail. Cities sparkled like tiny jewels across the continents. Thin streams of light marked the paths of their primitive aircraft. This will not be a battle, Admiral. This will be a demonstration. We will arrive in their system, broadcast our surrender demand, and these humans will submit within hours. They are not stupid. Once they see our fleet, they will understand the futility of resistance. Kethvar wanted to argue further, but he had already pushed as far as military protocol allowed. Supreme Commander Thexel had never lost a campaign. His confidence was legendary, and it had never failed him. Very well, sir. The fleet is ready to depart on your command. Excellent. We leave within the hour. I want to be orbiting their world by tomorrow. As the senior officers filed out of the war room, Kethvar remained behind, staring at the image of Earth. Something felt wrong about this mission. In his long career, he had learned to trust his instincts. They had saved his life more times than he could count. The planet looked so peaceful. Swirling white clouds covered vast blue oceans. Green continents teemed with life. It reminded him of his own homeworld before the great industrial expansion. There was a beauty to it that seemed almost too perfect. "Sir?" Lieutenant Kexvy approached hesitantly. "The fleet reports ready for hyperspace jump." "Very good, Lieutenant. Signal all ships. We jump in 10 minutes. As the young officer hurried away, Kethvar took one last look at the tactical display. The human defenses were laughably weak. A few orbital stations, some communication satellites, and scattered military installations on the surface. Their entire space presence could fit inside one of his dreadnoughts, yet something nagged at him. The missing scouts bothered him more than he could explain. 3 separate missions, each with experienced crews and state-of-the-art equipment, all vanished without even a distress signal. Maybe Thexel was right. Maybe it was just bad luck or equipment failure. Space held many dangers that could destroy even advanced ships without warning. Solar flares, asteroid impacts, navigation errors leading ships into stars or black holes. But 3 times? The Admiral shook his massive head. He was being paranoid. In a few hours, they would arrive at Earth and demand surrender. The humans would see the incredible size of the Zephyrian fleet and immediately submit. There would be no battle, no casualties, and no mystery about the missing scouts. It would be the easiest conquest in military history. "Sir, all ships report ready," came the announcement from the bridge. "Begin the jump," Kethvar ordered. The stars outside stretched into lines of light as 12,000 Zephyrian warships entered hyperspace. In the cargo bays, 2 million warriors checked their weapons and prepared for what they expected to be a simple planetary occupation. None of them suspected they were about to encounter something far beyond their understanding. None of them imagined they were flying toward a species that had turned the fundamental forces of the universe into everyday tools. The greatest invasion fleet in galactic history was about to learn that sometimes the most dangerous enemies are the ones who don't even know they're fighting a war. Carl Hendricks pushed his mop bucket down the empty hallway of the CERN facility. The night shift was always quiet, which suited him just fine. 43 years of working as a janitor had taught him to appreciate peace and quiet. The scientists who worked here during the day were nice enough, but they always seemed to be in a hurry, rushing around with their clipboards and talking about things he didn't understand. The old clock on the wall showed 2:17 a.m. Carl had another 3 hours before his shift ended. He planned to finish mopping the main corridor, then grab a cup of coffee and work on his crossword puzzle. Tuesday nights were always slow. A strange beeping sound came from the communications room down the hall. Carl frowned. That room was usually empty at night. All the important calls came during normal business hours. Maybe someone had left a machine running. Carl knocked on the door, then pushed it open. The room was dark except for the glow of several computer screens. One of them was flashing red and making that annoying beeping sound. A message window had appeared on the main display. "Huh," Carl muttered, squinting at the screen. The text was in English, which surprised him. Most of the technical stuff around here was in languages he couldn't read. The message was short and simple. "Primitive inhabitants of the 3rd planet. Your world has been selected for conquest by the Zephyrian Galactic Empire. Surrender immediately and your deaths will be quick. Resistance is futile. You have 1 solar rotation to comply." Carl scratched his gray head. This had to be some kind of joke. The younger scientists were always playing pranks on each other. Last month, someone had programmed the coffee machine to speak in a robot voice. The week before that, they'd made the elevator play circus music. But the message looked official. And that beeping was getting on his nerves. Carl found the reply button and clicked it. A text box appeared asking for his response. He thought for a moment, then typed, "Could you folks keep it down? Some of us are trying to work here." He hit send and turned off the beeping sound. Much better. Carl made a mental note to tell Dr. Chen about the prank message in the morning. She always got a kick out of the practical jokes around here. 12 light minutes away, Admiral Kethvar stared at the human response in disbelief. The bridge of his flagship had gone completely silent. Every officer was reading and rereading the message. "Sir," whispered Communications Officer Trellix, Should I respond?" "What kind of response is that?" demanded General Vexta. Are they mocking us? Kethvar studied the transmission data. It had come from what appeared to be a research facility on the planet's surface. The message was direct, simple, and showed no sign of fear or respect. Perhaps they don't understand the situation, suggested Commander Zilmoth. Maybe their translation systems are primitive. The message was in their own language, Kethvar replied grimly. They understood perfectly. Supreme Commander Thexel's voice boomed across the bridge. Enough! These insects dare to mock the Zephyrian Empire. Show them what happens to those who defy us. The order was passed down through the fleet. Within minutes, the first wave of atmospheric fighters launched from the carrier ships. 300 sleek attack craft streaked toward Earth's atmosphere, their weapons charged and ready. On Earth, Carl had moved on to cleaning the laboratory section. He hummed an old song while he worked, completely unaware that several hundred alien spacecraft were diving toward his planet. The fighters entered Earth's atmosphere like falling stars. Their pilots were the elite of the Zephyrian military, trained for planetary assault missions. They expected to encounter primitive aircraft and crude missiles. Instead, they encountered something impossible. The first fighter simply vanished. One moment it was screaming through the upper atmosphere at 3 times the speed of sound. The next moment there was nothing. No explosion, no debris, no energy signature. The craft and its pilot had ceased to exist. Then the second fighter disappeared. Then the third. Within 30 seconds, the entire attack wave was gone. Report, Kethvar shouted into his communications device. Sir, came the panicked voice of Flight Commander Nexel. They're just gone. All of them. No enemy contact, no weapons fire. They just stopped existing. Impossible. What about their telemetry data? Nothing, sir. The signals just ended, like someone turned off a switch. Admiral Kethvar felt a chill run down his spine. This was exactly what had happened to their scouting missions. Ships approached Earth and simply vanished without explanation. Launch orbital bombardment, ordered Thexel. Enough games. Destroy their largest cities. The massive guns of the dreadnoughts turned toward Earth. Energy beams capable of melting continents charged to full power. Targeting systems locked onto major population. Centers firing. Announced Weapons Officer Krelvex.12. Beams of pure destruction lanced down toward Earth. Each one carried enough energy to vaporize a mountain range. The combined bombardment could have cracked a moon in half. But something strange happened as the beams approached the planet. They began to curve. At first, it was barely noticeable. Then the beams started forming perfect spirals, twisting around themselves like cosmic corkscrews, the weapons fire that should have destroyed. Human cities instead formed beautiful patterns in space before dissipating harmlessly into the void. What's happening? Thexel demanded. Sir, our weapons they're not behaving normally. Something is interfering with the beam coherence. Impossible. Nothing can deflect our primary weapons. Meanwhile, on Earth, Dr. Sarah Chen was working late in the International Space Monitoring Station. She was analyzing gravitational wave data when she noticed some unusual readings. There seemed to be several large objects in the outer solar system that weren't supposed to be there. Interesting, she murmured, making notes in her computer. Gravitational anomalies. Mass concentrations that don't match any known celestial bodies. She tagged the data for further investigation tomorrow. Right now, she was more interested in the strange quantum fluctuations she'd been tracking near Jupiter. The reading suggested some kind of exotic matter interaction, possibly related to the new experiments at the Lunar Research Station. Back on the Zephyrian flagship, panic was spreading through the fleet. The most advanced military force in the galaxy had just been rendered completely helpless by an enemy they couldn't even see. Sir, reported sensor specialist Yextri, I'm detecting massive energy fields around the planet. The gravitational readings are impossible. It's like they've weaponized space-time itself. Admiral Kethvar studied the sensor data with growing horror. The energy signatures coming from Earth didn't match anything in their databases. The humans weren't using conventional technology. They were manipulating the fundamental forces of the universe. How is this possible? Whispered General Vexta. They barely have space travel. Maybe, Kethvar said quietly. We misunderstood what we were looking at. The Admiral stared at the peaceful blue world below. What they had mistaken for primitive technology might be something far more advanced than anything the Zephyrian Empire had ever encountered. On Earth, Carl finished mopping the laboratory and checked his watch. Time for that coffee break. He walked past the communications room, where the screen still glowed softly in the darkness. The old janitor had no idea that his simple response to what he thought was a prank message had just become the official first contact between humanity and an alien civilization. And he certainly didn't know that somewhere above his head, the most powerful invasion fleet in galactic history was trying to figure out why their weapons didn't work and their ships kept disappearing. Carl just wanted to finish his crossword puzzle and go home. Admiral Kethavar paced the bridge of his flagship, his forearms clasped tightly behind his back. In 3 hours of combat, the Zephyrian fleet had accomplished nothing except losing nearly 1,000 ships to inexplicable disappearances. Every weapon they fired curved away from Earth like water flowing around a stone. "Sir," reported Communications Officer Trellix, "Supreme Commander Thexel demands an immediate conference call." Kethavar winced. He could imagine how well the Supreme Commander was handling their complete failure to make any progress against these supposedly primitive humans. The holographic display flickered to life, showing Thexel's furious face. Behind him, the bridge of his command ship was in chaos, with officers rushing between stations and alarm lights flashing. "Admiral, explain to me how a species that burns coal for energy has neutralized our entire attack force." "Sir, we are dealing with technology beyond our current understanding. The humans appear to have weaponized fundamental forces that we cannot detect or counter." "Impossible. Our sensors show no advanced weapons, no energy shields, no defensive installations. Yet our ships vanish the moment they approach the planet." Kethavar pulled up the latest tactical display. "Sir, I recommend we target one of their orbital installations. Perhaps a direct assault will reveal how their defenses work." Thexel studied the data. Several small space stations orbited Earth, each one apparently devoted to scientific research. They looked fragile and undefended very well. "Take 300 ships and destroy their largest orbital facility. But Admiral, if this fails, I will hold you personally responsible." The connection ended, leaving Kethavar alone with his impossible mission. He selected his best ships and most experienced crews. If the humans had some kind of super weapon, at least he could learn how it worked before his fleet was destroyed. The target was a research station about the size of a small city. According to their intelligence, it was devoted to something called exotic matter research. The humans seemed to treat it as a routine scientific facility. As the Zephyrian attack force approached, Dr. Marcus Webb was having the most exciting day of his career. The exotic matter containment field was holding steady at 99.7% efficiency, which was a new record. His team had managed to create a stable pocket of space where the laws of physics behaved differently. "Increase the field strength by 0.3%. He called to his assistant, Dr. Yuki Tanaka. "Let's see if we can maintain coherence." "Field strength increasing," she replied, adjusting the controls. "All parameters are within normal ranges." The experiment was designed to study how matter behaved when the fundamental constants of physics were slightly altered. By creating small regions where gravity was stronger or weaker, where time moved faster or slower, they hoped to understand the underlying structure of reality itself. It was purely theoretical research. The field only affected a small area around the station, and the changes were so minor that they required sensitive instruments to detect. Outside the station, Admiral Kethavar's attack force closed in. The pilots were nervous but determined. They had been chosen for this mission because they were the best of the best. "Target acquired," reported Squadron Leader Mexvan. Beginning attack run, the first ships entered the research field at full speed, weapons charging for a coordinated strike. Then physics stopped working the way it was supposed to. Fighter pilot Zexkol found himself experiencing time in reverse. His ship was flying backward through space while his thoughts moved forward. He tried to fire his weapons, but the energy beams emerged from the target and flew into his guns. Squadron Leader Mexvan discovered that his navigation system insisted he was simultaneously at every point in the universe. His ship existed in 17 dimensions at once, which was making it very difficult to steer. Commander Yeldry watched in horror as his cruiser's antimatter containment began converting back into regular matter, while the ship's hull spontaneously transformed into antimatter. The process was happening slowly enough that he could observe it, but fast enough that nothing could stop it. "What's happening to us?" screamed pilot Texnol as his fighter craft began phasing in and out of existence. On the research station, Dr. Webb noticed some unusual readings on his instruments. "Yuki, are you seeing this? We've got massive gravitational disturbances in the field. It's like something large entered the experimental area." Dr. Tanaka checked her displays. "I'm reading multiple objects, but the sensor data doesn't make sense. They seem to be existing in several different quantum states simultaneously." Dr. Webb frowned at his screens. The exotic matter field was reacting to the presence of these unknown objects in fascinating ways. Whatever had entered the experimental zone was being subjected to localized alterations in the laws of physics. "Fascinating," he murmured. "The field is creating recursive temporal loops around the foreign objects. And look at this. Some of them are experiencing spontaneous matter-antimatter conversion. Should we shut down the experiment?" Dr. Tanaka asked. "No, this is incredible data. We're seeing real-time demonstration of how exotic matter affects macroscopic objects. Quick, adjust the field parameters to stabilize the anomaly." Dr. Webb began making adjustments to contain what he assumed was a natural phenomenon. He increased the field strength and modified the quantum fluctuation patterns to prevent the mysterious objects from destabilizing. The effect on the Zephyrian ships was immediate and terrifying. Those caught in temporal loops found themselves reliving the same moment over and over, but slightly differently each time. Ships that had been converting to antimatter suddenly existed as both matter and antimatter simultaneously. "Admiral," came a panicked transmission from the attack force. "We need immediate evacuation. Reality is breaking down around us." Kethavar watched the tactical display in growing horror. His ships weren't being destroyed. They were being transformed into something impossible. Energy readings showed his vessels existing in multiple dimensions, traveling through time and violating every known law of physics. "All ships, retreat immediately," he ordered, but retreat was impossible. The ships caught in the field couldn't move in any direction that made sense. Some tried to fly away but ended up approaching the station instead. Others attempted to fire their engines but discovered that thrust now pushed them toward whatever they were pointing away from. Dr. Webb continued his adjustments, fascinated by the complex interactions he was observing. "The objects seemed to be artificial constructs," he told Dr. Tanaka. "Metal composites with some kind of exotic energy sources. Probably debris from an old satellite or space probe." He made another adjustment to stabilize the field. This caused half the Zephyrian ships to phase shift into a parallel dimension where the speed of light was much slower. The other half found themselves in a reality where gravity repelled instead of attracted. "This is incredible," Dr. Webb said, completely absorbed in his work. "We're seeing real-time proof that the fundamental constants aren't really constant. Look how easily they can be modified." Admiral Kethavar received the final transmission from his attack force. "Sir, we're not in normal space anymore. The laws of physics here are different. We can't even describe what's happening to us." Then the signal stopped, not because the ships were destroyed, but because they were no longer existing in the same universe as the rest of the fleet. Dr. Webb made one final adjustment, successfully stabilizing his exotic matter field. The mysterious objects had provided excellent data about how matter behaved under altered physical laws. He made careful notes about the experiment for his next research paper. "Well, that was educational," he said, pouring himself a cup of coffee. "I should get some sleep. Tomorrow I want to analyze these readings and see if we can reproduce the effect." On the Zephyrian flagship, Admiral Kethavar stared at the empty space where 300 of his best ships used to be. They hadn't been destroyed. They had been casually erased from reality by humans who thought they were conducting a routine physics experiment. The terrifying truth was becoming clear. The humans weren't defending themselves. They didn't even know they were under attack. Their primitive research was so far beyond Zephyrian understanding that they could accidentally eliminate entire fleets while drinking coffee and taking notes. And if this was just their basic research, what other impossible capabilities were they hiding? The Admiral realized with growing dread that the Zephyrian Empire had just declared war on beings who treated the fundamental forces of the universe as laboratory equipment. Admiral Kethavar stood alone in his private quarters, staring out at the stars. In 6 hours of combat, the mighty Zephyrian invasion fleet had been reduced from 12,000 ships to fewer than 4,000. The humans hadn't fired a single shot in return. The worst part was that Earth's inhabitants still didn't seem to know they were under attack. Every military action the Zephyrians had taken had been treated as a minor inconvenience or an interesting scientific phenomenon. A soft chime indicated an incoming communication. Kethavar reluctantly activated the display, expecting another furious message from Supreme Commander Thexel. Instead, he saw the worried face of his intelligence officer, Commander Wexthul. "Sir, we've intercepted human communications from the planet's surface." "I think you need to see this," the display changed to show intercepted radio transmissions from Earth. Kethavar's translation system worked quickly to convert the human languages into Zephyrian. "This is Dr. Sarah Chen at the International Space Monitoring Station. I'm reporting unusual gravitational anomalies in the outer solar system. Large mass concentrations that weren't there yesterday." Another voice responded. "Confirmed, Dr. Chen. We're seeing the same readings. Should we file a report with the Department of Extraterrestrial Affairs?" "Better safe than sorry. Log it as a possible first contact scenario and send the paperwork to Geneva." Kethavar felt his blood turn cold. The humans had finally noticed the invasion fleet, but they were treating it as a bureaucratic matter. They had a government department specifically for alien contact, which meant they had been expecting this day. "Sir," Commander Wexthul continued, "there's more. The humans have begun what they call debris cleanup operations in orbit around their planet." The display showed new communications intercepts. This time, the voices belonged to human military personnel. "This is Lieutenant Sarah Martinez reporting for orbital maintenance duty. I've been assigned to clean up the space junk that's been cluttering our outer defense perimeter." "Copy that, Lieutenant. Just treat it like a standard asteroid clearing operation. Use the molecular disassembly beam to break down any foreign objects into component atoms." Kethavar's forearms began to shake. Molecular disassembly beams? The humans were talking about weapons that could reduce matter to its basic atomic components. The Zephyrian Empire had theoretical plans for such devices, but the energy requirements were beyond their technology. "Commander, show me the tactical display." The holographic image revealed the current position of the Zephyrian fleet. They were retreating toward the outer edge of the solar system, trying to regroup beyond the range of whatever impossible weapons the humans possessed. But it was too late. A small human ship was approaching from Earth, moving at speeds that should have been impossible for their primitive technology. "Sir," reported sensor specialist Yextri from the bridge. "Human vessel on intercept course. It's very small. Maybe 20 meters long. Weapon status? I'm not detecting any weapons, sir. In fact, I'm not detecting much of anything. The ship barely registers on our sensors." Admiral Kethavar rushed to the bridge. On the main display, he could see the approaching human vessel. It looked like nothing more than a small maintenance craft, the kind used for routine repairs on space stations. Lieutenant Sarah Martinez was having a good day. Fresh out of MIT with a degree in applied physics, she had landed her dream job working with the latest military technology. Today's assignment was simple: clean up some space debris that had been interfering with Earth's orbital traffic patterns. The debris field was larger than she'd expected. Hundreds of metallic objects floating in neat formations. They looked almost like spacecraft, but that was impossible. If aliens had really visited the solar system, it would be all over the news. "Debris field acquired," she reported to ground control. "Beginning molecular disassembly sequence." Sarah activated the standard matter conversion beam that Earth's military used for asteroid mining. The device could break down any material into its component atoms, leaving behind neatly organized clouds of elements that could be collected for recycling. She targeted the largest piece of debris first. It was an impressive chunk of metal, maybe a kilometer long and covered with what looked like weapons ports, probably a movie prop that had been left in orbit after some science fiction film. The molecular disassembly beam struck the object. For a moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then the massive structure began to come apart at the atomic level. Metal plates separated into individual molecules, which then separated into individual atoms. Within seconds, the entire object had been reduced to a perfectly organized cloud of iron, carbon, and other basic elements. "Target eliminated," Sarah reported, proceeding to next debris item. On the Zephyrian flagship, every officer on the bridge watched in stunned silence as their most powerful dreadnought simply ceased to exist. One moment it was there, bristling with enough firepower to destroy a planet. The next moment it was nothing but floating atoms. "How?" whispered General Vexta. That ship had armor plating 2 meters thick. Its shields could withstand a supernova blast. Admiral Kethvar couldn't answer. He was too busy watching the human craft move on to its next target. Another dreadnought vanished, reduced to its component elements in less than 10 seconds. "Sir," Commander Zilmoth's voice was barely audible. Should we surrender?" Before Kethvar could answer, his communications officer interrupted. "Admiral, incoming transmission from the human vessel." The main display flickered, showing the face of a young human female. She looked friendly and professional, like someone calling to discuss a routine business matter. "Hi there," Lieutenant Martinez said cheerfully. "I'm Sarah, and I'm working on cleaning up this debris field. I wanted to let you know that some of your ships are drifting into the cleanup zone. You might want to move them to a safe distance." The bridge fell completely silent. The human was warning them about their own safety while casually eliminating their most powerful warships. Admiral Kethvar managed. Thank you for the warning. No problem. I'll be working in this area for the next few hours, so just keep your distance and everything will be fine. Have a great day." The transmission ended. Lieutenant Martinez went back to her work, systematically disintegrating every piece of debris in the area. Each Zephyrian warship took less than 30 seconds to reduce to basic atoms. "Sir," Sensor Specialist Yextree reported quietly. "She's destroyed 57 of our ships in the last 10 minutes. At this rate, the entire fleet will be gone within 2 hours." Admiral Kethvar made the hardest decision of his military career. "All ships retreat immediately. Full speed to the edge of the solar system." "Sir?" General Vexta looked confused. "We're abandoning the mission?" "General, look at that display. A single human in a maintenance craft has eliminated more of our ships than we've lost in the last 100 years of warfare. And she thinks she's cleaning up garbage." The surviving Zephyrian ships began their desperate retreat. Behind them, Lieutenant Martinez continued her cheerful work, breaking down matter at the molecular level and humming a popular song from Earth's radio. "Ground control, this is Sarah. I'm about halfway through the debris field. Some of the larger pieces had really interesting designs, almost looked like alien spaceships from a movie. Copy that, Sarah. Take your time and be thorough. We want that space lane completely clear." "Will do. Martinez out." As the Zephyrian fleet fled toward the outer solar system, Admiral Kethvar realized the horrible truth. The humans weren't superior warriors or advanced strategists. They were just a species that had learned to manipulate the fundamental forces of reality with the same casual ease that his people used simple tools, and they were still treating this entire encounter as a routine maintenance operation. The most powerful invasion force in galactic history was being defeated by a cheerful young woman who thought she was taking out the trash. The last 12 ships of the once mighty Zephyrian invasion fleet limped through hyperspace toward their home system. Admiral Kethvar sat in his damaged command chair, staring at reports that would change the balance of power across the entire galaxy. In less than 18 hours, the most advanced military force ever assembled had been reduced to a handful of survivors. They hadn't been defeated in glorious battle. They had been casually cleaned up like space debris by beings who didn't even realize they were fighting a war. "Sir," Communications Officer Tralix spoke quietly, "we're receiving a priority transmission from Imperial Command." Kethvar nodded wearily. He had been dreading this moment. "How do you explain to your superiors that an entire invasion fleet was destroyed by humans who thought they were doing routine maintenance?" The holographic display showed the stern face of Supreme Admiral Vorthak, the highest military authority in the Zephyrian Empire. Behind him stood the members of the Imperial War Council, their expressions mixing disbelief with growing alarm. "Admiral Kethvar," Supreme Admiral Vorthak's voice was ice cold, "your preliminary report is either a complete fabrication or evidence of total mental breakdown. Explain yourself." Kethvar straightened in his chair. "Sir, every word of my report is accurate. The humans possess technology that makes our most advanced weapons look like primitive clubs. They can manipulate the fundamental forces of the universe as easily as we manipulate simple machines." "Impossible," declared War Council member Thexrin. "Our intelligence reports show they barely understand nuclear fusion. How could such primitives develop reality manipulation technology?" "Because they're not primitives, sir. We misunderstood everything about them. What we thought was primitive technology is actually so advanced that we couldn't recognize it." Admiral Kethvar activated his personal data files. "Sir, I've compiled evidence from across the galaxy. Similar incidents have been reported in 17 different star systems over the past 50 years. The display showed incident reports from various alien civilizations. Each told the same basic story. Exploratory missions to human space had vanished without explanation. Military probes had disappeared. Even automated reconnaissance drones had simply stopped transmitting when they approached Earth. The Valdorian Collective lost an entire research fleet near human space last year, HFY continued. The crystalline hegemony reported similar losses. Every major galactic power has experienced these disappearances, but we all assumed they were isolated incidents. Supreme Admiral Vorthak studied the data with growing concern. Are you suggesting that humanity has been systematically destroying alien visitors? No, sir, I don't think they even know we exist. Their defensive systems are actually scientific experiments that accidentally eliminate anything that gets too close. We're like insects flying into a power grid. We're not being swatted, we're just colliding with forces too powerful for us to survive. The War Council members exchanged worried glances. This was far worse than a military defeat. This suggested that humanity represented an existential threat to every spacefaring civilization in the galaxy. What capabilities did you observe? Asked War Council member Kelthara. HFY consulted his notes. Localized manipulation of space-time, molecular disassembly weapons, gravitational field control, and what appeared to be pocket dimension technology. All of this was being used for what they called routine scientific research. And their military forces? Sir, I don't think they have military forces in any sense we would understand. Every action taken against us was performed by civilian researchers or maintenance personnel. They treated our invasion as a minor inconvenience. The implications were staggering. If humanity's civilian researchers could accidentally eliminate invasion fleets, what could they do if they actually decided to fight? Meanwhile, on Earth, Dr. Sarah Chen was putting the finishing touches on her research paper. The gravitational anomalies in the outer solar system had provided fascinating data about exotic matter interactions. She had spent all night analyzing the readings and was excited to share her findings with the scientific community. Anomalous gravitational interactions in the Sol system would be published in next month's Journal of Applied Physics. Dr. Chen was particularly proud of her theoretical explanation for how large mass concentrations could spontaneously disperse into component particles. She had no idea that her theoretical explanation described the actual destruction of hundreds of alien warships. In his laboratory across town, Dr. Marcus Webb was also working late. His exotic matter experiments had produced unprecedented results. The field had interacted with some unknown objects in a way that demonstrated how easily the fundamental constants of physics could be modified. His next research proposal would request funding for larger-scale experiments. If they could create stable regions of altered physics, the applications would be limitless. Faster than light travel, unlimited energy, even the possibility of creating pocket universes. Dr. Webb sipped his coffee and continued typing his grant application. He was thinking about theoretical possibilities, not knowing that he had already trapped hundreds of alien beings in alternate dimensions where the laws of physics made survival impossible. Back in Zephyrian space, the surviving fleet members were being debriefed by intelligence specialists. Every detail of their encounter with humanity was recorded and analyzed. The conclusions were terrifying. Sir, reported Intelligence Director Nexthul, based on the evidence, we estimate that humanity's casual research capabilities exceed our most advanced military technology by several orders of magnitude. Supreme Admiral Vorthak absorbed this information grimly. Recommendations: immediate reclassification of Earth from potential conquest target to existential threat. We recommend emergency sessions with all galactic powers to discuss this crisis. Crisis? Sir, if humanity continues advancing at their current rate, they will accidentally develop technologies that could destabilize entire star systems. They're treating forces that could destroy planets as everyday laboratory tools. The emergency session of the Galactic Council convened within days. Representatives from hundreds of alien civilizations gathered to discuss the human problem. The meeting was held in absolute secrecy, far from any human listening posts. The question before us, announced Council Speaker Vorthak, is how to respond to a species that possesses godlike powers but doesn't seem to know it. Appeasement, suggested the crystalline hegemony representative. We approach them as humble petitioners offering tribute and hoping they don't notice us. Quarantine, countered the Valdorian delegate. We establish a boundary around their solar system and forbid any contact. Neither option addresses the real problem, said Admiral Kethvar, who had been invited to share his expertise. Humanity doesn't know they're dangerous. They'll continue expanding into space, conducting their research, and accidentally eliminating anyone who gets in their way. The debate continued for hours. Some suggested attempting to educate humanity about their true capabilities. Others proposed secret monitoring to track their technological development. A few extremists even suggested preemptive strikes, though this was quickly dismissed as suicide. Finally, the Council reached a consensus. They would send a diplomatic mission to Earth, approaching as peaceful visitors seeking scientific exchange. Maybe if they could establish friendly relations, humanity would be more careful with their reality-altering experiments. The diplomatic ship approached Earth slowly, broadcasting messages of peace in every known language. They were careful to stay well outside the range of any human research installations. The first response came from an unexpected source. A teenage amateur radio operator named Kevin Martinez, no relation to Lieutenant Sarah Martinez, who had been trying to contact the International Space Station. Kevin's message was brief and confused. Hello? Is this some kind of new phone system? Who is this? The lead diplomat, Ambassador Thexanova, carefully composed a response explaining that they were peaceful visitors from another star system who wished to establish diplomatic relations with humanity. Kevin's reply would go down in galactic history. Cool. Are you guys the ones who were making all that noise last week? My sister Sarah said something about cleaning up space junk, but that was probably just work stuff. The ambassador realized with dawning horror that the teenage human was related to the military technician who had casually eliminated half the Zephyrian fleet. This family treated casual genocide as work stuff. The message was forwarded to Earth's governments, who were surprisingly well prepared for alien contact. Within hours, humanity had officially joined the galactic community as its newest and most terrifying member. The welcome message from Earth's president was friendly but ominous. We look forward to sharing our scientific discoveries with our new galactic neighbors. We have so many interesting experiments planned. Across the galaxy, every major civilization immediately began drafting emergency peace treaties with humanity. The age of human expansion was about to begin, and nobody wanted to be in their way when they started their next round of routine scientific research.